Good afternoon and welcome back to my channel. Now, EU house prices, and the percentage is going to be a little bit shocking for you, so be prepared for this. Now, Fingal, T-shirt, Michael Martin, so on and so forth. It's all a game to them, and regardless, I couldn't care less. Protesters want to keep going on every day. I hope it lasts for the rest of this year and longer. Now, EU house prices up 65% since 2015. Ireland's doubled. Well, it's nothing unusual for any of us now, is there? House prices jumped by almost 65% across the EU since 2015. Now, rents and house prices have seen significant increases in most EU states in the last 10 years, and we know that as well. And it's no surprise for any of us. According to the latest figures from Eurostat, house prices in Ireland more than doubled, plus 103% since 2015. Across the EU, house prices jumped by almost 65% in that period, in what is seen as a sign of a systemic crisis. Yeah, you can say that again. The growth has continued in the last 3 months of 2025, when house prices rose by 5.5% across the EU compared to the same period in 2024. Hungary saw the sharpest rise in house prices, which more than tripled over the past decades. Supply has fallen. In 2024, the country of 9.8 million delivered just over 12,000 new homes, a 9% drop year on year, while a raft of family and rural supportive schemes along with rising wages has fueled demand. Saying that, Finland was the only country where house prices decreased since 2015 by 3%. According to the Eurostat's data, while 12 out of 27 members of states saw house prices doubling. Chronic undersupply of new homes and the influx of foreign buyers attracted by the country's sunny weather are among some of the reasons for Portugal's 180% jump in house prices in the last 10 years. The equality of some dwellings is also a concern, as 130,000 families live in inadequate housing and mostly concentrated in the main cities and the Algarve. It is important to note that some of the sharpest rises can also be attributed to inflation, but real house prices have also increased. According to the 2025 paper called Housing in the European Union, prepared for the European Commission, in real terms or when compared with consumer goods and services, house prices in the EU grew 25% on average between 2014 and 2024. Now, real house prices increased the most, above 50%, in Hungary, Portugal, Lithuania, Slovenia, Czechia and Ireland. Now, real house prices in 2000 to 2024's Director General for Economic and Financial Affairs European Commission stated that rents saw slower inflation than house prices between 2015 and the third quarter of 2025. They went up by 21.8% across the EU, according to Eurostat's data published just this week. Now, year-on-year rents went up 3.2% in the last quarter of last year. The slowest pace of rent growth was recorded in France, Spain and Luxembourg, while Finland saw a slight decrease. However, Ireland was well above the EU average. Rents here have increased by 76% in the last decade, putting it in the third highest rate of inflation, along with Poland, following Hungary and Lithuania. Now, pan-European crisis. While each national market has its own dynamic, the cost of housing and limited supply is now recognised as widespread across the bloc by the EU leaders. House prices in the EU have risen faster than incomes over the past decade and have reduced purchase affordability, according to the European Commission report. A flurry of reasons accumulating over the years have contributed to the crisis. Increasing urbanisation and migration and a prolonged period of cheap mortgages drove demand, while supply fell behind in many states. Overall rental stock also shrunk due to the boom in the short-term rentals. In conclusion to that, on the supply side, new construction has lagged behind demand due to the regulatory barriers, sector inefficiencies and labour shortages, with renovation often prioritised over building, the housing report as stated and mentioned. So, the refurbishment of a housing in Seville, Spain seeks to expand the public housing stock. So why can't they do that over here? Now, in a downbeat assessment of the European housing situation, President of the Housing Europe, Marco Corradi, called the crisis structural and systematic, with the power to potentially affect the public's trust in institutions and threaten the attractiveness and competitiveness of our cities and regions. In its 2025 review of the state of housing in the EU, Housing Europe, the federation representing public, cooperative and social housing groups, noted that several EU countries have massive overall unmet needs. France requires 518,000 homes annually, Germany at least 400,000, the Netherlands nearly 1 million by 2031, and Sweden over 500,000 by 2033. Now, that resulted in a particularly acute crisis for younger people across the EU, with roughly a third of 24-35 years old in full employment still living in their parental homes. And that figure was as high as 40% in Ireland in 2022. Students demonstrate to ask affordable housing in Lisbon on March 24th, 2026. However, more over 20% of housing in Europe remains unoccupied. Amid mounting pressure, the European Union introduced its first ever housing policy, the Affordable Housing Plan, approved by the European Parliament last month. The roadmap outlines the need to boost new builds and renovations, mobilise more public and private investment, reduce administrative burdens and tame the rise of short-term rentals. Whether Brussels has enough resources and power to put the ambitious plan into action remains to be seen. They should implement that over here. With one of the fastest growing populations in the EU, lagging supply and high construction costs, Ireland sits at the sharpest edge of the European housing crisis. Yeah. Last year saw 36,000 homes built, but the central bank has suggested 52,000 new homes need to be built annually over 25 years to catch up with the demand. So that's just a small dose of information that's been introduced to me, and I just hope that's of some use to you. And at the same time, I just want to say thank you very much for those who have watched my videos and taken the time to listen to